How many of you know how the genesis of the story? Harry Potter.
Wasn't she like
Like how she came about?
Yeah, how the idea
Oh, yeah.
came to her mind. Okay, she's on her. J.K. Rowling was a single, unwed mother, essentially on Scottish welfare at the time. She was on a train from Manchester to London. She was unemployed, and somewhere on that journey, about a 2.5 hour train ride, at one moment she has no idea about this 11-year-old boy, and literally 5 seconds later, she has this idea of a boy who discovers on his 11th birthday that his parents were murdered by the most evil dark wizard who has ever existed, and that the dark wizard wants to kill him. Okay? And his name was Harry Potter. Okay? That happens, if I remember right, sometime in 90 or 91. Okay? Within 15 years, okay, of that idea popping into her mind, she's gone from being on welfare to being the richest woman in the United Kingdom. Wealthier than the Queen. Okay, if you can imagine that. She begins writing the first novel, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, as it ought to be called. She's writing it longhand, yellow legal pad kind of stuff. She's taking her daughter to a couple of different cafes in Edinburgh, and they let her just sit quietly aside, and she sits there and writes. She had gotten some aid from a Scottish humanitarian or humanities council because she had shown some drafts, and they said, yeah, this looks interesting, and I don't remember what it was. It wasn't much. It was like 1,500 or 3,000 pounds at the time. And she finishes the first book. While she's writing the first book, however, she's taking notes and jotting down ideas and clipping out names and stuff for the subsequent books, because she intends from the beginning this is going to be a 7-part series. Okay? And there's one reason it's going to have 7 parts. One of her favorite authors also wrote a 7-part series, C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia. Okay? So she finishes the first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and she sends it off to a publisher. Publisher sends her a nice little rejection letter back. Thank you very much. It's not really our cup of tea. She sends it off again. Okay, now, this woman has perseverance, because it takes 21 times before she gets an acceptance letter. Okay? It was rejected either 20 or 21 times by publishers. Bloomsbury, an acquisitions editor, gets it and rolls the dice. Not sure that it's going to do anything, not sure that it's going to sell, but he takes a chance. And it initially has a fairly small print run. I don't remember what the exact number is, but I don't think it was more than like 5,000 or 10,000 copies. And it sells quickly. Okay? Bloomsbury does not have any advertising budget for the book. There's one reason it sells: word of mouth. Parents are buying this book because their kids are asking for it, because Johnny has talked to Betty, because Betty has read it, and Johnny thinks Johnny should read it, so Johnny reads it. So then Johnny reads it, he tells Fred, Fred tells Sally, and it starts to spread that way. Parents start to see, here are these kids who have never really read before, and they're reading this book. So the parents start to read it. Okay? That's when it starts to take off. And Bloomsbury goes through multiple prints. First edition, first printing, or the first book was printed in 1997. It was first published in 1997. Okay? Second book, Chamber of Secrets, comes out in 98. Third book comes out in 99. When I first heard about it, is either January, or it must have been January of 99. I was driving into work one day, this is back when I listened to NPR, and the London bureau chief for NPR, a guy named T.R. Reid, was talking about this new series of books that has taken London by storm. And he said, you know, it's a series of children's books, but it's not like that, you know, dowdy old moralistic, you know, religion-pushing stuff of C.S. Lewis. And I heard that and I thought, you ass. And I immediately, you know, blanked out from my mind everything else he essentially said. Take that back. That must have been January of 90, or sometime in 98, because that was after the second book was out. About a year later, must have been January of 99 then, I'm doing shopping at Sam's Club. And they've got a little display because the third book is out. So I pick up the first one, and I start reading it, and I'm like, okay, there's more to this than what he let on. Bought it, read it like overnight, and said, there's an awful lot going on here. Bought the next two, and was completely hooked, okay? And then was one of those who pre-ordered, you know, the other volumes and all that kind of stuff, okay? Anybody have a rough idea how many copies of these she has sold? I meant to check the statistic before class, and forgot to.
It's like billions or trillions.
No, well, it's not billions or trillions. It's about 500 million. As of the last time I taught this course, which was spring of 13, I think, it was over 450 million. Okay? It's the best-selling book or series of books in the history of publishing, you know, except for maybe the Bible. Okay? The next runner-up, by the way, according to most counts, is Tolkien. Tolkien has sold over, I think it is 250 million copies. But that's since 1954. Okay? Over 450 million in 17 years. That's a lot of book sales. And that gives you an idea of why she is so filthy, stinking rich. Okay? Why couldn't it have been one of you who'd been on that train? You know, or me who'd been on that train? Where do these ideas come from? How did Tolkien just happen to be sitting there and turn an exam page that he was grading in the summer of 1930 or 1931 and write, in a hole of ground there lived a hobbit? And then he goes on and starts grading the next page. He had no idea what that sentence meant. It began as a story for his children, though. He started to kind of flesh it out. Okay? So, I mean, that's the background of where her story comes from. I want to say anything else about that. Well, let me address a couple other things. How many of you, Heather told me this, how many of you had parents who didn't want you to read them? Or had friends who weren't allowed to read them? Okay? Why? I know I'm asking a silly question, but...
Evil wizardry.
The evil wizardry. Magic. Okay? Witches and wizards. And the Old Testament says, don't do anything with witches. Doesn't actually mention wizards, but don't have anything to do with witches. Okay? What is the purpose of the quote-unquote witchcraft in these novels?
Fantasy.
Fantasy. Okay.
Betterment of human life, because they even say that anything that does something negative or takes away from the positive has been put in what they call dark magic. And
Okay, that's true. But what else? What role does the witchcraft, the actual, wand waving and spell casting and potion making, what role does all of that really serve? From book 1 through book 7.
kind of almost a replacement of technology, and it's used. in the
Okay,
same-
it is that. I mean, they don't have electricity, okay? But what else? Is that the real magic of the stories? No, not at all. That is a mere technique, okay? It's a framework. It's like the foundation and the stud walls of a building. Are the foundation and the stud walls the actual building? No. What do? They hold everything else together, okay? The magic in here, okay, the witchcraft, the wizardry, the spells, the potions, the charms, all that kind of stuff, that is merely the scaffolding, okay, upon which she hangs this whole tale. But what is the tale ultimately about?
Good and evil.
Yes. Good and evil. Okay? Is how do I put this? What kind of good and evil?
Power of love.
Yes. Okay? I'm going to jump to the very end for a moment. How many of you have seen the films? Especially the last two.
Wish I had it.
Okay? I haven't. I won't. But I know what happens at the beginning of the 7th and the end of the 8th. Okay? Let's jump to the end of the 8th. Let's do it this way. In the book, in the 8th book, 7th book, sorry. What does Harry offer Voldemort? Chance of redemption. When we first hear about Horcruxes, okay, in, what is it, book 6?
Book 6.
And Hermione steals Dumbledore's books, and Ron asks, well, isn't there any way to repair yourself? And she said, well, yeah, you can, but it's really, really hard, and it's really, really painful, because what do you have to do? Show remorse. Have to feel contrition, okay? And if you do that, it's possible to repair your soul. At the end of book 7, Harry and Voldemort are facing each other. They're in the Great Hall at Hogwarts. No, it's the heart, as it were, of Hogwarts. And what does Harry say? Be a man, Tom. Try for a little remorse. I've seen the real you. It's your only hope. He doesn't actually say it's your only hope, but he does say it's your last chance. Okay? And what does Riddle say? Not again. Love. Okay? And what happens? He doesn't take the chance. Okay? Where is that in the film?
Doesn't make it to the film.
It's not. So what do they do in the film instead?
Harry overpowers him.
Harry defeats Voldemort how?
Through brute strength.
What does Gandalf say they can't do with the Dark Lord?
They can't defeat
Can't
him.
defeat him with force of arms. What kind of spell does Harry use to defeat Voldemort? Let's say in the book. Expelliarmus. What does he use in the film? I don't know. Does he use Avada Kedavra? Wouldn't surprise me.
No, it's red and red.
Okay, is it a red
It's a red.
jet of light? Okay, that's Expelliarmus probably. If it's Avada Kedavra, it's gonna be green. Okay? But it's Harry overpowering Voldemort. See, Expelliarmus isn't an overpowering spell. What is it?
So disarm.
It's disarming.
Self-defense.
It's defensive. Okay? So, if you take the film and read it, what does Harry's actions at the end show?
Might be right.
Might makes right. Okay? So when Harry, Ron, and Hermione go into the Ministry of Magic in Book 7, and they see the big statue with all the muggles down the bottom, and the witch and the wizard sitting there, you know. That's what the film ending ultimately justifies. Now, that is the complete opposite of what J.K. Rowling intended. Right? And here's how we know it's the complete opposite. After the books got really, really big, okay, summer of 2001, which I believe is when book 4 came out, summer of 2001 is late summer, I believe it was like August. She gave an interview with the Vancouver Sun newspaper. And the reporter asked her a variety of questions, and the reporter asked point blank, because Rowling had already been burned in effigy. She'd already been consigned to the lowest pits of hell by a wide variety of Christians, okay? I think I've said in here, I'm farther to the right than Genghis Khan, politically, okay? And, you know, helped found a church here in Murfreesboro, so I don't take my Christianity lightly. She was asked, well, are you a Christian? Her first answer, yes. Okay? It wasn't waffling. It wasn't, well, if you mean by Christian, can we all just get along and everybody believe what they want, and we'll all eventually find our way to the little Jesus in the sky. She didn't do that. She said, yes. Well, what kind of Christian? Church of Scotland. Okay? For Americans, that's a Presbyterian church. Okay? And it's not necessarily an namby-pamby kind of watered-down version of the Presbyterian church. So, 2 big points there. The interviewer then said, well, how does that affect your books? Okay? How does your Christianity affect your books? And she said, well, if I answered that, it would give away the ending. So, is the ending that Satan lives, Satan wins, and I'm going to draw all your children to myself, you know, as the high priest? No! Okay? She is telling her readers, okay, there is something about Christianity in these tales. Does that mean, ipso facto, therefore, Harry is Jesus? No. She's not writing an allegory. Not at all. Nor is Dumbledore, by the way. Nor is Dumbledore Gandalf. A lot of people have wanted to say, oh, look, wise wizard, stupid follower. Gandalf, Harry. Which would make Ron what? And Hermione what? Hermione a gender-bending Sam, maybe? Or, you know, I don't know. I mean, you could just get on the internet and read your slash fiction and go with that wherever you want to go, because believe me, it's gone everywhere it possibly can be, or everywhere it can go.
Interesting enough, though, if you even take the allegory of the Horcrux, because you have something that murder, usually the cause of the Horcrux, But even with you
Always.
breaking your soul, if you feel remorse or you repent before, then you can actually still be saved, as in when you repent for your sins.
Sure, yeah, and that's very clear. And we're even gonna see little elements, okay, of some of this Christian ideology in this book. Let's I don't want to spend too much time. First chapter, very first paragraph. These are essentially all the things I want to talk about, and there's some in here that I didn't mark because they're within chapters, so we'll see what I'm able to do. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, number 4, Privet Drive, were proud to say that they're perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. Okay? Notice what the Dursleys hold to be nonsense. What is it? Anything strange or mysterious. Okay? What does strange mean?
Whatever the majority considers the path, anything that strays from it.
Yeah, it's anything out of the norm. Okay? This is different, however. Okay? Because mystery has at its root this, mist. Okay? Let's use this form. What's a mystery? Something that's not understood. Okay? Does that mean quantum mechanics for me is a mystery?
For you, yes, it's a mystery.
No. Why not?
Because it's understood by someone else.
And
You could.
with a really good teacher, I could learn it. Right? So what's a mystery? Something unknowable. Ultimately, a mystery is something that is not logically or rationally apprehendable or comprehensible. Okay? So, subatomic space is not a mystery. It's just maybe we haven't had the right intellect to plumb all of its depths. Okay? Jump back to Christianity for a second. The incarnation of Christ, Christmas, that's a mystery. Why? What's it basically mean? God, and one has to, in order to use this analogy, one has to, at the very least, accept the idea of God. God, that creates everything, suddenly becomes a baby. Let's say 8 pounds, 2 ounces, 19.5 inches. Poops his diapers, pees on his mother, the whole God that created everything shrunk down into a little bitty size, like the genie, in Aladdin. How does that happen, really? That's a mystery, okay? The nature of the Trinity, 3 persons, 1 essence, 1 God, not 3 gods, 1 God. How do you understand that up here? You don't. You don't. That's why early writers of the church essentially say, you reach a point that you just have to shut up and say, I believe. Okay? Those are mysteries. Notice, the Dursleys think anything that is strange or out of the normal, or anything that is mysterious, that cannot be understood rationally or logically, is what? Nonsense. Okay, now, what could be included in here? Leave the Christianity stuff all aside.
Magic.
Magic. What else? What's this course largely about? Fantasy. Right? What's another word for fantasy? What does it arise out of?
Imagination.
Like Tolkien said. Imagination. pretty strange? I mean, you need proof? Talk to a 5-year-old. They'll tell you all kinds of things that are there that aren't really there. Or maybe they are, and we just don't see them. Okay? They have a sense of mystery that's much better developed than ours. Why? Because ours de-evolves over time. Okay? So this is what we're told about the people that Harry's going to be raised by. Anything, ultimately, that is non-rational or non-measurable, non-quantifiable is nonsense. Okay? So what else is non-measurable and non-quantifiable?
Faith.
Love.
Faith, love, hope, and joy? I mean,
Emotions in general.
yeah. How do you measure love? You fall in love with somebody, you want to get married. If you're a guy, you're going to propose. You say, hey, baby, I love you like this much. Okay? What if somebody else comes across and says, well, I love you like this much? You're screwed. I mean, because that's twice as much. Is a 1-carat diamond less than a 2-carat diamond?
Yes.
Financially, yes. Emotionally, sure as hell better not be. If it is, don't go through with it, because there will be problems, okay? So, we get a little information about the Dursleys, about what kind of people they are, and they're just thoroughly rotten, nasty people, okay? So, Mr. Dursley goes off to work, and he overhears some strange things during the day about owls, and he sees people dressed oddly, and he goes home that night and he asks his wife about her crazy sister's son. And says, page 7, Petunia, you haven't heard from your sister lately, have you? She says, no. Why? Well, funny stuff on the news. Okay. And then he asked about her son. What, he'd be about Dudley's age, wouldn't he? I suppose so. What's his name again? Howard? Harry. Nasty. Common name. Okay. What's her son's name? Dudley. Not a lot common about that. Not many people name their sons Dudley anymore. I was just reading the other day something online. Apparently, according to one gossip site or something, Prince Harry is back with his old flame, Cressida. How many people really name their daughters Cressida anymore? I mean, that's like a name from classical literature. And by the way, it's not a good name. It means you're going to break up, okay? Or she's going to cheat on you. It's just, don't do it, Harry. The other one, okay? So, they keep talking. Meanwhile, out on the street, a man appears at the end of the street. And we get a description of him, and we're told he's nothing like anybody who's ever been seen on the street before. Okay? And he sits there, and he pulls out this thing, and starts doing this, and the lights go out. We meet Professor McGonagall. I'm going to skip a bunch. We meet Professor McGonagall, and on page 11, McGonagall says, as I say, even if you know who has gone, my dear professor, surely a sensible person like yourself can call him by his name. All this you-know-who nonsense. For 11 years, I've been trying to persuade people to call him by his proper name. Okay? So what are we told there? Voldemort has been in power of sorts for 11 years when Harry is how old? 1 year old. Okay? So, Voldemort had risen to power 10 years before Harry's birth. Okay? Are we told how old Harry's parents are when he's born? No. Okay. She says, well, you don't have to worry about it because, Voldemort was only ever frightened of you. Dumbledore. Voldemort had powers I will never have, only because you're too, noble to use them. What does she mean by that? You're too noble to use those powers.
He has the capacity for it, but won't because they're evil.
Okay? Yeah. She's implying you could do the things Voldemort does, but you're too, what's another word for noble? Good. You're too good. Was he always too good?
No.
You learn the hard way.
Okay, exactly. He learned the hard way. So, they keep talking, and Dumbledore, or McGonagall mentions that Lily and James are dead, and Dumbledore says, I know, kind of bows his head. She says, it's true. It's true. Voldemort's gone. After all he's done, this is bottom of page 12, all the people he's killed, he couldn't kill a little boy. Notice, she almost makes it sound like he couldn't bring himself to do it. Okay, that's not what happened. But how in the name of heaven did Harry survive? Okay, what kind of phrase is that, in the name of heaven? It's like an oath. Okay? Because when you say the name of heaven, what are you really talking about? You're not talking about space. You're not talking about the sky. What are you talking about?
Deity of some.
Yeah, the place where God dwells. Otherwise, you would have said what? The heavens. That's what you use to refer to the sky and what lies beyond the sky. Okay? Dumbledore. We can only guess, we may never know. Okay? So Dumbledore tells her, I'm going to leave Harry here. She's like, you got to be crazy. He goes, no, it'll be fine. I'm going to leave a letter. It'll explain everything. She says, Dumbledore, these people will never understand him. He'll be famous, a legend. Bottom of page 13. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in the future. There will be books written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his name. Okay? She says, I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in the future. What day is it? It's the day after Halloween. It's November 1, what year? 1981. Okay, so Harry was born 7/31/1980, because he was born on J.K. Rowling's birthday. So, November 1, 1981. The 1981 is not important. It's All Saints Day. What's another name for that? All Hallows Day, which is why we call the day before Halloween. Hallows Eve, the night before. Okay? So what's All Hallows Day, or All Saints Day? It's the day when the church commemorates all the saints who have died. And here she says, I wouldn't be surprised if this day is called after Harry Potter in the future. That's not an accident. Because later on in the novels, what is Harry going to be called? Specifically by Lucius Malfoy.
Saint Potter.
He doesn't use saint. Close. He says, Patronus Potter. Okay? Take the U.S. off. Patron Potter. A patron is not necessarily just somebody who writes a check for arts. Patron saint. Okay? That is the saint who is to protect you. When Harry learns the Patronus charm, I'm just going all over here. You know, expecto patronum. What does that mean? Expecto can mean I expect, the O ending, this is a Latin, the O ending indicates it's I doing it. So I expect, which means I look for, I seek, okay? But expect literally means X out of pec, like pec muscles, out of the chest, what?
The patron.
A patron. The patron isn't a native English word, and it's not a word a lot of people use every day, so what's meant by it? Protector. Guardian. Savior. Is it any accident that after this in book 4, we hear Harry described at the end of book 5 as what? The chosen one. And then all throughout book 6. Okay? Because what is the chosen one the translation of? Messiah. It means the anointed, the chosen. Okay? So, are there Christ-like parallels with Harry? Oh yeah, definitely. Did Jesus go to a school for witchcraft? No, he didn't. Right? So, Dumbledore says in response to McGonagall saying, he'll be famous, there'll be books written about him. Exactly. It would be enough to turn any boy's head. What does he mean, to turn any boy's head?
Let it go to his head.
Yeah, to make him egotistical and conceited. Imagine for a second that Harry, the character we're familiar with, did not have the character that our Harry has. Imagine for a moment that he had the character Draco Malfoy has.
Voldemort 2.0.
Yeah, Voldemort 2.0. Easily. Or Dudley, you know, when he's 16 beating up on 10-year-olds. Right?
Or any of the, in the modern sense, any of the stories of child actors. I mean,
Yeah, quite a few of them. Right? So, can't you see how much better off he'll be growing up away from all that until he's ready to take it? And she's like, okay, I believe. I trust you on this. So, they leave Harry, and what happens? He grows up quickly. We skip almost 10 years. Right? It's Dudley's birthday. Dudley gets a bunch of birthday presents. He didn't get as many as he had last year, so what does he do? Throws a tantrum. What does he need? He needs this, you know. He needs whichever side, back side, front side. Okay? So, they take Dudley to the zoo, and Harry has to come. Why? Because that batty old crazy babysitter, Mrs. Fig, okay, has broken her leg. They're on their way to the zoo, page 25. Motorcycles go by, or Vernon is talking about motorcycles, roaring along like maniacs, the young hoodlums. And Harry says, I had a dream about a motorcycle. It was flying. And Uncle Vernon nearly crashes the car. Motorcycles don't fly. And Harry's kind of like, duh. That's why it was called a dream, you know. But what does that show us again? What does Uncle Vernon do with dreams?
nonsense.
Repress them. Push them all down. Don't express them. Okay? So, Harry goes off, he talks to the snake. Little error here in the writing. If you know anything about snakes, what's the problem? Louder? They can't blink. Snakes don't have movable eyelids at all. Okay? And she hasn't written or edited and done a second edition. Maybe if she ever does, she'll fix that. She ought to. So Harry talks to the snake, he disappears the glass, he gets sent to his room, and what happens? A letter arrives for Mr. H. Potter, page 34, the cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. Harry wants to read it. Vernon won't let him see it. Mail comes next day. And there's another one. Okay? Next morning, Harry tries to beat Uncle Vernon to the mail, steps on him as he tries to get over the threshold. On Friday, page 40, 12 letters arrive. Saturday, 24 letters arrive. How? They're not hidden in the egg carton. They're inside the eggs themselves. Okay? Mystery, anybody? How the hell do you get letters inside eggs?
Nonsense.
Yeah, you don't feed them to the chickens. It doesn't work that way. Because that comes out another way, and it would take pretty good science to be able to read those letters. Okay? That is nonsense. It cannot be rationally understood. Okay? But what does Vernon do? I can stop this nonsense. Okay? He thinks the best way to deal with nonsense is to do what?
Confront
Is it to confront it? Is he confronting the letters?
So he wants to run away.
He's acting like, I can run away. I can pretend they don't exist. And so they run away. Okay? And they go off to the Railview Hotel in Cokeworth. And what happens? 100 letters show up the next day. So then what do? He rents a boat. He goes off onto a rock off the coast. And it's a rock. It's not even an island. Okay? And it has a hut on it. They go into the hut, has a crappy old couch, has a bedroom with crappy furniture. And what does Vernon bring to supply them with?
Potato chips.
Some potato chips and some bananas. That's it. Right? Dudley's asleep. Harry's looking at his watch, the time ticking closer and closer and closer until it's 12 a.m. on the morning of his 11th birthday. Big old bang on the door. In fact, the door gets banged in. And Harry meets Hagrid. Okay? Page 49. I'm skipping where Hagrid and Vernon have their little initial conversation. Hagrid tells Harry his name, and then says, "Did you never wonder where your parents learned it all?" Oh, what? Oh, what? Now, wait just 1 second. Do you mean to tell me that this boy knows nothing about anything? Harry's like, I can do math. I'm not a complete moron. I can tie my shoes and ride a bike. Well, our world. I mean, your world, my world, your parents' world. What world? You must know about your mom and dad. I mean, they're famous. You don't know. What's Hagrid dealing with?
Harry not knowing anything about where he is.
Harry not knowing anything about who he is. His identity. Okay? And Hagrid is suddenly thrust in the position of kind of being a father figure to tell him. What does Vernon do? No more. Stop. Why? Because he says, forbid you to tell the boy anything. Hagrid, you never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him. I was there, I saw Dumbledore leave it. Harry kept what from it? Stop, I forbid you. You're a wizard, Harry. He's like, what? I mean, he might be sleepy, he could be dreaming. He pulls out the letter and gives it to him. And he reads, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Headmaster Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Sorcerer, Chief Warlock, Supreme Mugwump. What the fat is a Mugwump? You know, International Confederation of Wizards. Writes a letter, sends it off. And Vernon says he's not going. What? I'd like to see a great muggle like you stop him. Harry, what'd you call him? A muggle. It's what we call non-magic folk like them. And it's your bad luck you grew up in a family of the biggest muggles I ever laid eyes on. Okay? So, non-magic folk are muggles. But Hagrid says they're the biggest muggles he's ever seen. What does he mean by that?
Stereotypical concept of what needs to be muggle.
Well, okay, but I think he's getting again back at this. Anything that is inexplicable, okay, the Dursleys will have nothing to do with. Vernon, we swore when we took him in we'd put a stop to that rubbish. Swore we'd stamp it out of him. And he's tried, right? How's Harry been treated for the last 10 years?
Like, oh yeah.
Right? Has he physically been abused?
Yes.
By Dudley.
By Dudley, okay? Not necessarily by Vernon and Petunia. We don't hear that they ever strike him.
They do treat him like an indentured servant.
Yeah, he's treated, well, I mean, he's a child. I've got 4 of them. What else? Is he starved? He's a little thin, but he's not starved. He doesn't run around naked. He's got clothes. Okay, they're Dudley's clothes.
Hand-me-down.
Okay? I was the youngest of 5. I understand hand-me-downs.
One of the punishments that's listed when Vernon gets mad at him, though, is no meals. How would he know that this is not a consistent punishment of no meals?
Could be.
That's starving.
It could be. Well, I mean, we're told that he's gangly, okay? You would think if he was starving, we would be told that his cheeks would be a little sunken, he would be very pasty. He's not pasty, he's quick. I mean, he's able to dodge to get away from Dudley. If he was starving, he probably wouldn't have that ability, right? So, what happens? Petunia just goes bonkers. No, curse! I knew. How could you not? My grand sister being what she was. Oh, she got a letter just like that. Disappeared off to that school. Came home every vacation with her pockets full of frog spawn, turning teacups into rats. Okay, now this could be mere exaggeration, that she's turning teacups into rats. But if she is turning teacups into rats, after her first year and all the way through the end of her 6th year, then what should they have been getting? Yeah. Okay. So what has Rowling done here? This isn't a fault or error in this book. It becomes a fault or error after she writes some of the other books, and we get more of the background of the world. Okay? Like The Prisoner of Azkaban, when we find out about the restriction for underage wizardry.
I always thought because her sister was jealous and her sister used to come home and talk to her sister that maybe that was an exaggeration because she knew about what that was happening at the school.
Could be, but later on we're going to hear more, and it's clear that from what she says, Lily does come home and do underage magic. Okay? And what that means is that there's an inconsistency between the world as it is portrayed in this book and as it gets portrayed in other books. Why? Because probably as she starts writing all the others, she's not going back and making sure every little thing is consistent. Okay? Probably. Here's one exception. Tolkien. And here's why. How long did it take him to write them? He started in 1936. He finished writing Lord of the Rings in 1949, and then he revised it for almost 5 years. Okay? And it's,
Didn't you write them all as one kind of book?
yeah, I mean, it's all intended as one big book. It's the publisher who said, no way are we publishing this as one book. Okay? But yeah, I mean, he wrote it all as one large novel, and then he went through to make sure everything was consistent. Remember what he says in the fairy story essay, okay? Did I have you guys read the fairy story essay? Yeah, I did. You know, about that internal consistency is what makes that little imaginary world work. Yes?
Well, in one of the later books, they explained that if you live in a magical home, you can get away with it because they don't detect it. Isn't Godric's Hollow considered magical?
The town is, but her parents aren't. Because, I mean, Lily's the only magical person in the family.
Well, she was close enough to the others, wouldn't that cancel it out?
I don't think so, because, again,
They track like individual wands. with
yeah,
that
and,
magic.
and you can't have non-magical people seeing magic. That's the problem. I mean, Hagrid's going to explain in just a moment. Harry asks, well, why do you need a Ministry of Magic anyways? He says, come on, Harry. We got to keep the magic hidden. Otherwise what? Everybody's going to want magical solutions to all their problems. Any of you want a magical solution to your problems? I sure would. Got a list of them. Yeah. Question or comment?
It was answered.
Okay. So,
Pair my glasses.
Hagrid goes on, explains about Voldemort, and then Vernon tries to take the conversation back, page 56. Load of old tosh! Now you listen here, boy. I accept there's something strange about you, probably nothing a good beating wouldn't have cured. You should just send him off to Aunt Marge, you know. And as for all this about your parents, well, they were weirdos, no denying it, and the world's better off without them, in my opinion. Man, that is really low to say. As for all they got, getting mixed up with these wizarding types, just what I expected, always knew they'd come to a sticky end. Okay, it's very, very similar to what Aunt Marge does say in the third book. Okay? And she kind of gets what's coming to her. So, Hagrid takes Harry off to Diagon Alley. And that's where they talk about the Ministry of Magic. I'm going to skip more than I had actually intended. They go to Gringotts. Harry sees the nice little verse that essentially says, don't steal, because you'll pay for it. He runs into Madame Malkin's, pages 77 and 78, and meets another student. Page 77, a boy with a pale, pointed face standing on a footstool. My father's next door buying my books, and mother's up the street looking at wands. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing rooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one, and I'll smuggle it in somehow. What does this tell us about this little boy?
Trouble, right?
He's a brat. Trouble. What else? Okay. Notice what he says. I'll bully father.
He runs a household.
Spoiled rotten. Okay. They keep talking. He mentions words that Harry doesn't have any idea what they are. Quidditch. Okay. Asks Harry if he knows what house he'll be in. Harry says no. And then he asks Harry, where are your parents? They're dead. Oh, sorry. But they were our kind, weren't they? Harry, well, they're a witch and wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they get the letter. Imagine! I think they should keep it in the old wizarding families. What's your surname, anyway? Saved by the Bell. Okay? Notice how she creates this little bit of tension and then just leaves it hanging so that we don't have Harry tell this boy who he is until they're on the train. Okay? So, Harry goes off to Ollivander's. And we get the wand chosen. Page 85. Ollivander about wits himself. Oh, bravo, yes indeed. Oh, very, very good. Curious. Harry, what's curious? I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter, every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather. Just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand, when its brother gave you that scar. Okay. Harry's wand is made out of what?
Holly.
Holly and Phoenix. What's Voldemort's?
You.
You and Phoenix. I haven't even talked about names or a lot of other kind of symbolism that Rowling is using in here. The books, by the way, are full of symbols because she studied medieval literature. Okay? And you have medieval literature. In medieval literature, you have these books, books of animals, where the animals represent other things. You probably aren't familiar with it because it's a Christmas carol that is no longer heard much in the United States, but it is still heard regularly in England. There's a Christmas carol called The Holly and the Ivy. Okay? It's very old, it's from the Middle Ages. What kind of bush is holly or tree? Does it shed its leaves? No.
It's evergreen.
It's evergreen. Okay? And what does it do in winter? What does it have?
Very
What color?
red.
And it has red berries. Okay? What's the tail of the phoenix?
Whatever it rises from its ashes.
Mythical bird that rises from its ashes. Every 500 years, torches itself, burns all up, and then it grows out of its ashes for 500 years, and it does it all over again. Okay? It is a symbol of resurrection. If you go to the Trinity Church in Stratford-on-Avon, where Shakespeare is buried, on the altar, there's a big old altar cloth, okay, a tapestry, and right in the middle of it is a phoenix. Not a cross, not Jesus, not Mary, a phoenix, a mythical bird. Okay? You see this image in an awful lot of medieval texts that are clearly about Christ. Okay? So phoenix is often an image of Christ. So, Harry's got all of this. I'm going to explain these two in just a moment. This is Voldemort. Why the U?
It's in graveyards.
Okay, it's in graveyards sometimes, not always. What else? It's poisonous. And what specifically is it poisonous to? What kind of animals won't eat the yew? Deer or stags. Okay? Back to the evergreen and the red berries. Evergreen is everlasting. What are the red berries? The reason that you have that Christmas carol about the holly and the ivy is because the holly is representative of Christ. It's everlasting, ever living, and it's got the red berries. What else does it have? Its leaves are shaped how? Like that. These, just try pruning one without any gloves or anything, are thorns. So you have everlasting, thorns, red. Okay?
And usually they're used in the making wreaths.
And you use them in making wreaths, okay? Nice little circles, crown of thorns, the whole 9 yards. So that's just a little bit of symbolism. We haven't even talked about, because we're obviously not going to finish the book today, we're going to get by. The name Voldemort, or Voldemort, if you want to pronounce it, like a Frenchie would. What's it mean? It's got 3 components to it.
What is that?
Vol, de, mort. Yes, mort is death. Vol comes from the Latin volare, which means to fly, could also be to flee. De means from, away, out of. Put it all together, to flee from death.
Just the whole goal of everything we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole lot more meaningful than Tom Marvolo riddle. Okay? So, Harry gets his supplies. He goes back to the Dursleys. They take him to King's Cross because they've got to go up to London anyways to get Dudley's tail removed. Harry meets the Weasleys. They help him through the barrier. He gets on the train. He meets Ron. He and Ron hit it off immediately. Why?
Ron's unassuming.
Ron's unassuming. What else?
He's also fan-struck because he asked Harry, "You who I think you are."
Yeah. Well, except he knows Harry is who he says, who he thinks he is, because his 2 brothers already said, "There's Harry Potter," and Jenny's trying to get a look at him and everything. What else?
His family already has helped him.
Say that louder.
His family's already helped him out.
Okay, his family's helped him out a little bit. What else? Where does Ron fit in his family?
He's second longest place.
Second youngest, youngest of the sons, okay? Family's well off, right? Not so much. So Ron gets hand-me-downs, and what does Harry wear? Hand-me-downs, okay? So they have that going for them. But then Harry has something going for him that Ron doesn't. What's that?
He's Harry Potter.
He's Harry Potter. He's famous. Ron is the exact opposite of famous. Okay? With this little exception. What happens when Malfoy and his goons come in? Okay, yeah, I mean, before Scabbard fights him, what does Malfoy say specifically to Ron? Oh, everyone knows you're a Weasley. Well, they are kind of famous then. Yeah, the red hair. Okay? But they bond together because Ron is as fearful of going off to Hogwarts as Harry is. Even though Ron has older brothers there who can help him. How many older brothers are there? 3, plus 2 that had already graduated. Let's talk about those older brothers real briefly. How much help would Fred and George be to Ron? That's what I thought. How much help would Percy be?
Probably.
It depends. If he came at
But he's
Percy
also-
like a do-gooder himself, then Percy would probably help him because he's about networking.
Probably. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, well, we find out later on in the book that he's a Quidditch player, so he's probably pretty preoccupied to help, considering his prefect duties and being a Quidditch player.
Percy's a Quidditch player?
Or no?
Fred and George. Fred and George are beaters.
Okay. I'm getting
Yeah,
confused.
Percy's not a Quidditch player. But Percy is a prefect. So what's he going to help Ron do? Follow those rules. Percy, if anybody was a muggle wizard, it'd be Percy. He's the most unimaginative person. Well, sorry, there's also Hermione. Percy and Hermione should have gotten married. They're really the 2 most unimaginative wizards that there are. So, Harry and Ron keep talking. They share food. Harry buys a whole bunch because he's loaded. They get the Dumbledore card. They read about Dumbledore's, battle with the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945. Does that suggest anything? Notice, Dumbledore defeats Grindelwald in 1945 in the wizarding world. What happens in this world in 1945? World War II is won. Okay. The Allies defeat the Axis in 1945. Is that mere accident? No, not at all. Why? Because this is what Rowling is doing. She is showing, and we see this especially at the beginning of book 6, that the world is like this. What do I mean by that?
Her magic, her world of magic is still in.
Exactly. It is the same world. What's the problem? Muggles don't have the eyes to see what's going on around them.
Even if they see, they try to logic it away.
And if they see it, it's nonsense. It can't be. So what do? They create fictions to make it reasonable. Well, I couldn't have just seen that, because that can't happen.
And in allusion to, like, you, just thinking about this, because you mentioned her favorite author being C.S. Lewis, the dwarves that refused to see the reality at the final
At the
book.
very end, in the last battle, the dwarves go off into the stable, and when other people go into the stable, what do they find? The new Narnia, the new heaven and earth. The dwarves go in, and what do they see? Inside of a stable. Okay? And that's all they see. And I think one of the characters asks Aslan, will they ever? And he says no. That's their choice. That's what they choose to see. Okay? Go on a bit. So they make their way to Hogwarts. I'm skipping a bunch, like when Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle come in and challenge Harry and Ron. And Harry and Ron they're willing to man up and take them on. And then Hermione comes in, so they leave. And we get the Sorting Hat. One thing I want you to do, or bear in mind, is compare this Sorting Hat song with the subsequent Sorting Hat songs. We don't get one in each book, but we get 2 other songs, right? And in each of them, it changes significantly, okay? So, page 118. You might belong in Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring nerve and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. So notice, Gryffindors are characterized by bravery, daring, nerve, chivalry. What's chivalry?
The concept of, a code of conduct of moral
Yeah,
behavior.
I started here, somebody say it over here.
Code of honor.
It is a code of honor that does what? I heard the word others.
Put others before yourself?
Yes, it's a code of honor, let's say valuing,
Selflessness.
valuing others, or emphasizing or preferring others. That's a long phrase. What does it mean? One word:
Selflessness.
selflessness, chivalry, humility. At its very heart, chivalry is humble because it denies self. It puts others' needs above your own. Okay? That's the first of the schools that's listed. Or you might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. So, Hufflepuff, just, that means fair. Loyal, patient, true, and hard workers. Okay? Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. So Ravenclaw, wise, good mind,
Clever.
witty, and you're able to learn well. Right? Or in Slytherin, those cunning folk use any means to achieve their ends. One quality defines Slytherin in this first song.
Ambitious.
Ambitious. Utilitarian. What does that mean?
The ends justify the means.
The ends justify the means. That is, if the end for you is good, it doesn't matter how you achieve that good end. For example, let's say Alan's good end is he wants to have $10,000 in his bank account by the end of this week. What would be one means to achieve that end?
Rob a bank.
Go rob a bank. If it achieves the ends, okay, that's it. So we see various people sorted. Harry gets sorted into Gryffindor. And notice with him, we see what we don't see with the other students. That is, we get the experience of the hat coming on and what's going on up here.
Interesting enough a choice.
Yeah. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see, which would put him where? Gryffindor. Not a bad mind either. Ravenclaw. I think the sorting hat's mistaken there, though, because he clearly is not, he's a 40-watt bulb in a box of 100 bulbs, right?
He has the cleverness.
Talent? Oh, my goodness, yes. What is talent? Possibility. Raw, innate ability.
Lends itself well to ambition.
But what must be done to talent? It's got to be refined, it's got to be used, it's got to be honed and practiced, okay? And a nice thirst to prove yourself. Now that's interesting. What does that mean? Slytherin, okay? Ambition. So where shall I put you? Not Slytherin, not Slytherin. Not Slytherin, are you sure? You could be great, It's all here in your head. And Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. No? Okay. Notice, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw are not even considerations. It's either Gryffindor or Slytherin. Right?
Selfishness or selflessness.
Yeah.
Also, what other choice we offer.
Interestingly, however, Rowling doesn't want us to choose Gryffindor. Interestingly. I'll just leave that for you to think about for a while. Okay, so we're going to skip a bunch again. And Harry meets Snape. And Snape's just a nasty piece of work. Okay? Ah, yes, Harry Potter, our new celebrity. And boom, he zips him with, 3 big questions. Harry doesn't have any clue. And of course Hermione does, because she's memorized all the textbooks. Okay? We hear about the Gringotts break-in. We get the midnight duel, because Harry and Malfoy smart off at each other. And Harry and Ron and Hermione go off. Actually, let's do that. They see Fluffy. I want to pick up with, page 148. Their first flying lesson. When I do my Harry Potter course in London, I usually, or in the past, almost every time, we've taken a field trip to Annet Castle, which is about a 4-hour train ride. It's only an hour from Edinburgh, Scotland. And because everybody's memorized the films just about. They're just walking around at Anik, jaws down on the ground, eyes as big as plates, because they're seeing all these places that were used for the films, and that's where Harry learned to fly. So, what is, I almost said Dudley, what does Neville do? He does what only Neville would do. He breaks his arm. He goes off on the broom, falls, breaks his arm. Madam Hooch takes him away. She tells everybody to stay put. We've already seen once Malfoy attempt to take Neville's Remembrall. Okay? Here, he does take it. He gets on his broom, jumps up, and Harry grabs his broom. Hermione, no, Madam Hooch told us to move. You'll get us all into trouble. Really? Is it going to get her into trouble? No. Harry ignores her. Blood's pounding in his ears. He mounts the broom, kicks hard, and what does he discover? I can do something. I'm not a complete failure. It's like he was born to fly. And so he goes up to Malfoy. Notice, he knows innately how the broom works. Give it here, Malfoy, or I'll knock you off that broom. Oh, yeah? Harry knew somehow what to do. This is top of 149. He leaned forward. Pew. No Crab and Goyle up here to save you. Well, catch it if you can, then. And Malfoy throws the Remembrall, which is like a golf ball size. Okay? And Harry makes this big old 50-foot, dive and catches it. McGonagall sees him, and what happens? He's the new seeker for their Quidditch team. Okay? Hasn't been a first-year seeker in how long? 100 years. Okay? And what else does McGonagall tell him? Little detail. Your father played Quidditch and was an excellent seeker. Okay? How much does Harry know about his father?
Zero until then.
Almost nothing. He knows his parents were witch and wizard, and that Voldemort killed him. That's pretty much it. He hasn't heard much else about his father yet. Okay? So, meanwhile, when Malfoy sees him again, he assumes Harry's been kicked out, and he goes, no, not really, thanks, because if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have been made Seeker. Now, how does Hermione interpret that little conversation? I suppose you think that means that it's okay to go and break the rules then. And Harry and Ron are like, shut up, just leave. So, Halloween comes. And Harry gets ready for his first practice. Notice when the Nimbus 2000 is delivered to him. It's not in the evening when he's up in his dorm room, and McGonagall quietly brings it up. Where is he? He's in the Great Hall. It's breakfast. Everybody is there, and these 4 owls come. And they drop this down. So what is that automatically going to do? Yeah, everybody's eyes are going to be dropped to that. So that Malfoy goes, he's got a new drum. Yes, he does. He has a new, broomstick. I almost said drumstick. Okay? So they go off to Charms, and they're trying to learn Wingardium Leviosa, bottom of 170 and 171. And Ron just can't get it right. And Hermione, being the little miss-know-it-all that she is, she goes, no, you're doing it all wrong. You gotta just flick your wrist, you gotta do Wingardium Leviosa, And Ron just wants to smack her. I mean, let's be honest here. So that when they leave the class, what does Ron say? Top of 172. It's no wonder no one can stand her. She's a nightmare. But having been an 11-year-old boy, yeah, that's pretty standard for how boys act. I mean, mean, nasty. And she runs by in tears. The feast comes up. Quirrell breaks in and talks about the troll. Ron and Harry go off with everybody else. They remember Hermione wasn't at the feast, so they go looking for her. They hear the troll, they lock it into the bathroom, and they realize that's probably where Hermione is. They go in, they knock out the troll, and what does Hermione do? She lies to a teacher. What else does she do, though? She takes the blame. I mean, she says,
It was my fault 'cause I went looking for the.
I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own. You know, because I've read all about them. Ron drops his wand. Hermione Granger telling a downright lie to it. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead. I'd be dead. Harry struck his wand up. No, I think she could have left that part out. And Ron knocked it out with its own club. They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. He was about to finish me off when they arrived. Okay. She's taking the blame there. Notice, McGonagall essentially just pats her on the back and says, well, in that case. What does that mean, well, in that case? What do you think if Hermione had said, Ron and Harry, were mean to me, and so blah, blah, blah. They probably would have gotten detention, okay? I'm going to skip the Quidditch chapter since we only have a minute left. Let's go to the Mirror of Erised. Christmas comes. Harry gets gifts. He gets real gifts for once. Notice. He gets a Weasley family sweater, which means he's an adopted Weasley member, as it were. He gets stuff from Ron. He gets stuff from Hermione. What does he get from Hagrid? Just on the off chance that Harry wants to become a world-famous flautist, Hagrid has whittled him a flute. Where have we seen Harry express any interest in music up to this point? None. What is that? It is, it's foreshadowing. It's merely a plot device. I mean, it's like a 500-pound anvil dropped right into the middle of the plot. Why? To make the rest of the plot work. Okay? And then Harry opens up a package from a secret person. And Ron says, I've heard of those. If that's what I think it is, they're really rare, really valuable. It's an invisibility cloak. Try it on. And Harry puts it on and disappears. How cool would that be? Okay? We'll stop there. And we will pick up with the Mirror of Erised on Tuesday. So we've got a little bit to catch up.
Papers are due Tuesday too, right?
No. Actually, I was going to send an email out about this, and I forgot to. I'm going to give you until Thursday for your exams. Okay? So they'll be due Thursday instead of Tuesday. I will send an email reminder out in about 3 minutes.